Hello and welcome to the 2018 Certification Evaluator Refresher presented by the American Culinary Federation for all of our certification evaluators, test administrators, approved mentors, and certification trainers. We've decided for 2018 to do an overview of the Certified Chef de Cuisine Practical Exam Market Basket requirements, which have been altered this year to better reflect the industry and for some other reasons that we're going to talk about. This evaluator refresher is going to last about an hour and conclude with a quiz, so please do not forget to take the quiz at the end in order to receive your record to maintain your evaluator status for 2018. So the welcome is what we're doing right about now, and then we're going to get into the overview and reasoning for the change to the Chef de Cuisine practical exam. We're going to talk about the requirements, the menu, the competency, and the new costing requirement that is put into this level. We're going to go into the market basket, into the ingredients. We're going to talk about the score sheet and how an evaluator can fill it out as it relates to the new market basket. And then we're going to do a few additional reminders just on generalized practical exam evaluation. So again, welcome. On the phone or on the webinar, we have Chef John Moosmiller, who is our practical exam subcommittee chair.
Greetings, everyone.
I also invited Chef John Schopp onto this webinar as the Certification Commission Chair-elect and the previous Practical Exam Subcommittee Chair, who was very instrumental in pulling this practical exam updates together.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
And myself, Jeremy Abbey, the ECF National Office Director of Culinary Programs. So to kick it off, I decided to give some reasoning and an overview as to why we changed the Chef de Cuisine practical exam, and the Commission thought it would be a really good idea in aligning with the broader scope of the Board of Directors and the Commission's goals. Really was to look and modernize the practical exam to cover today's industry. As many of you may know, that the Espagnole and the velouté sauce are not really practiced too much in today's industry in their truest form, so the old exam kind of removed those requirements from that exam and modernized the practical exam to cover more of today's industry ingredients as well as some of the requirements that match a chef de cuisine. Really expanding the competencies needed for the industry across levels. I know the practical exam subcommittee last year, when the development of this, really looked at all of the savory levels and compared the competencies that were in there. As many of you may notice that we have chicken sprinkled throughout all levels of, or many of the levels of the savory exam. So really trying to diversify the competencies as it relates to the entire savory ladder. Increase the appeal of the practical exam and the fun of this. I think the practical subcommittee made a really great decisions in making this a really fun exam that it looks like it's fun to cook. One of the biggest goals is to create a true stepping stone to the certified executive chef and then a stepping ladder to the certified master chef level if those that are interested. Chef Schopp?
Yes, I'd like to add, when this project first was presented to us and we started looking at it, I think this was an attempt to really go into our markets and pick those women and men that are cooking in the restaurants that are kind of shaping our landscape in our own market. These are the chefs that are running the hip restaurants, that have the hot hands cooking on their lines. And we didn't see many people historically testing for the CCC. Everybody wanted to jump to that CEC and looking at it almost as a mark of accomplishment at that level. And so part of this was to create an exam that targeted the true chef de cuisine and what represents a true chef de cuisine, and try to steer everybody away from jumping into the ladder right at the CEC level. We were tasked with building a practical exam bridge to the CEC, and then one from the CEC to the CMC. And I think the subcommittee and the commission did a really nice job with this. Really looked at creating a market basket, like Jeremy said, that was fun to cook, but also accessible across the United States for ingredients, and taking cost into effect too. So I think we've put together a basket that's cost effective, shouldn't break the bank, should be readily accessible, and hopefully creates a fun way to evaluate somebody and allowing them to do more of their style of cooking. So that's what we kind of sought out to do.
Awesome. So let's go over the requirements of the new practical exam. Chef Musnar?
Yeah, so the framework of the requirements, if you will, of the new CCC practical exam, again, this will be prepared for 4 portions. It will be a 3-course menu, starting with an appetizer first course, presented either hot or cold, followed by a soup course, which again can be presented either hot or cold, and then finished up with a main course to include appropriate sides and sauces. And again, this is all going to be prepared for 4 portions across the board.
So just a comment, too, on the soup course. This used to be the consommé requirement with the chef de cuisine, so it doesn't have to be a consommé anymore. It really can open it up to, like Chef Shop said in the previous slide, really allow for some of that stylistic cuisine of the chef to make its appearance and really get in there and showcase some of the cool things that are happening in our industry. Competencies that are required to be covered. As many people are aware, we have these listed for the executive chef level, so the subcommittee decided to list them again for the chef de cuisine level. Is 4 classical knife cuts somewhere throughout the menu. 1 sauce that's thickened with a slurry, can be either cornstarch or arrowroot or any other starch that they wish. 1 additional sauce of choice, so 2 sauces throughout the entire menu. The main course must be a composed course with a proper balance, and then some cooking methods that are required on the menu, so poaching, sautéing, and roasting. So knowledge of the following that need to get evaluated at the appropriate level on throughout the exam are some pretty common cooking items that are listed on the screen now. Chefs, do you have anything to add there? I'm pretty sure everyone can read what's on the screen.
Pretty self-explanatory. A properly spelled menu is nice. We'll talk about menu a little bit further on in this presentation. Proper thickening, dépouillage, and proper vessel of service, which is always controversial out there, I think, when we're evaluating.
And then some of those other things, like has been discussed with, different skill sets that aren't identified throughout the ladder is, silver skin removal and the fabrication of the items and appropriate, culinary skill set. One of the new requirements of this exam is an actual costing component, as the commission really wanted to better prepare our candidates for the written exam at the CEC level. There's the new requirement in the CEC pre-approval application that's requiring a cost control course work. So in order to prepare anyone that's going for the chef de cuisine level should have an introductory or a good understanding of how to cost a recipe. So right from the candidate handbook, they must submit the cost of the menu and proposed selling price with the recommended industry standard food cost percentage defined by the candidate. So again, it's just an exercise to make sure that the candidate understands what it is food cost is and how they can achieve that in a recipe menu scenario. There is a menu costing form that the national office has designed in order to help prepare and make evaluator lives easy and as well for the candidate. And we're just going to briefly go through this and some of those high-level points that evaluators can look at. We are requesting that every evaluator take a look at this form, not just one, because each evaluator is required to score it for the appropriate course. So this first section, the things to really look for is the menu item there, is the total yield for that menu item there, and what is the portion size that they are identifying. Section 2 is the ingredient, the amount, the weight of it, and then the cost. This can be a mythical cost that they don't really need to use. If they have a costing program, obviously they can use it and get a more accurate one. But again, this is just they don't have to use this form. It's just really a general idea. And as an evaluator, we ask that you look to make sure they have an understanding of that. If they have foie gras listed as an ingredient and somehow they can get it for $1 a pound, well, they might have a misinterpretation of the cost of the ingredient. And then a total per the recipe. And then, of course, we want to make sure that they understand the recipe cost. Section 3 is the bottom section of that form, where it's the cost per serving. Their food cost percentage, so whatever they're used to working with, or excuse me, an industry acceptable one. Obviously, if they put in there like a 85% food cost, they don't have an understanding. Their proposed selling price, and then the rationale the rationale behind their proposed selling point if it's needed. And then there's examples of how you would get that or how it should be written, just to help guide the candidate along the way. So we'll talk a little bit about the Chef de Cuisine Market Basket Ingredients, Chef Shop.
Fantastic. This should be a fun basket, I think. So we'll start with 1 cup of wine of choice. Red, white, sparkling could be fine. 10 ounces of fresh stock of choice. 1 to 2 pounds of pork tenderloin. We have a hearty green component. We have a bulb of fennel. 8 fresh oysters, live. There we go. 8 ounces of mushrooms. And we have 8 ounces of a grain of choice. 1 pound of root vegetable. And a half a pound of 2630 shell-on shrimp.
So one of the best things, like Chef Shop had mentioned before, is that these ingredients are pretty easily available throughout the country and pretty cost-effective too, as well, for somebody that's at this level of exam in the certification ladder. So the new evaluator score sheet for the Chef de Cuisine practical exam should look very familiar, as we're moving all of our score sheets to the individual evaluator score sheet, so there's a whole lot less paper to mess around with, where this is one evaluator, one score that then gets turned into the admin that gets inputted into the Excel spreadsheet. So the top half of this safety and sanitation is still acceptable, unacceptable, requiring comments if it's unacceptable. Go ahead.
I want to jump in before you go to the next screen, Jeremy. These electronic score sheets from the evaluator point of view are just great. From the admin point of view, I think are greatly appreciated also. I want to draw note to the upper right corner, the rating scale, because we still see out there we're evaluating. And as we're evaluators filling out our score sheets, I like to remind people to fill out that score sheet by observation on the back, the summary sheet, making comments of things you see good, things you see that maybe aren't so good, and really populating that back sheet. When it comes time to start filling in point spreads, I always like to refer to this rating scale and ask the question first. What I was looking at, was it acceptable? Did it have minor deficiencies, major deficiencies, or was it unacceptable? And then it gives you the point spread. I see still evaluators out there saying, well, it's, had major deficiencies, 7.4 or 8, So really ask the question first. what you're looking at. Is it acceptable, minor, major, or unacceptable? And then apply the appropriate spread, either at the high end of the scale or at the bottom end of the scale.
Great. Organizational skills are the same. Weight distribution, 20% of the score, which should only be filled out at the end of the exam. Craftsmanship skills we're going to get into a little bit further later on in this presentation. And then the finished product skills, 40% of the score, domain 4. And this is the piece where I just wanted to take a few minutes and point out the area of accurate costing. So as we're looking at this first section of domain 4, the appetizer first course, the menu presentation, achieving the stated menu, and the accurate costing is where we're looking at just the appetizer first course, is the accurate costing there, and then a score of 1 to 10 at a weighted value of 5% of that 40. We've designed some things to look at to use as a guide in determining that 1 to 10 scale for that one section with the menu presentation and achieving stated menus. There's a link on the screen right now that you can actually go and see this sheet as it's presented, as we've given you some guidelines to reference as this is new. So really just some bullet points to look at as it relates to this one section of menu presentation in the score sheet.
If we maybe just take a second here and talk a little bit just about a few of these. One Absolutely. That we have seen or that I've seen, happen quite a bit is just, making sure the menu is written correctly. It's easy to read. It matches the food. I think very often we see a lot of extra items under there as far as listed as what cuts are in there in the cooking method, which is all great. But I think what we're looking for is a menu that's written that would be presented to the customer. Behind that, I think it's okay to maybe have another copy by course with the items listed for each course as far as knife cuts presented in that course or the cooking method. But what we really want to see is a menu that's well written, neat, correct spelling, and would be acceptable to present to somebody there like you were presenting it in a restaurant.
Absolutely.
Please remember as evaluators as well that this is the chef de cuisine level, so this is pretty close to that certified executive chef level. So, proper grammar being used on the menu and misspellings, you should score that appropriately, as this is not a sous chef or certified culinarian level. This is, more advanced. This is a chef that has leadership responsibilities in an operation. So keeping that in mind as you evaluate the menu as it's presented. And then using that same concept, this is the lower part of the score sheet where it goes into the soup course again with the accurate costing menu presentation, and then the main course as well. On the bottom of these score sheets, we are listing the market basket ingredients as requested by many evaluators throughout the region or the nation. So we have the checklist available for you, just like the CEC level as well. And then the petite or baby vegetables of any on the market basket items are not acceptable, just like the CEC. So hopefully we'll start seeing more of the Chef de Cuisine practical exams happening throughout the nation as we're trying to re-energize this level to really get candidates prepared for this executive chef level. And that concludes this portion of the training as it relates to the introduction and an overview of the Chef de Cuisine practical exam. Chefs, do you have anything else to add to that piece of it?
No, I would encourage you to in your areas to reach out to chefs, non-ACF chefs, some of those folks running those restaurants that you're going out to eat at, and this is a good starting point. Especially some candidates come in and think, "Hey, I'm a CEC." Tongue in cheek, I like to say, CEC is kind of where chefs go to die. We're not cooking as much as we used to. We're doing a lot of meetings and a lot of planning and a lot of paperwork. These are the young guns, the hot hands, and this should be a fun basket, and we should encourage them to represent their cuisine, their style of cooking, and give it a shot.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think we need to encourage people to, especially to get into certification, is just to really look at, instead of jumping straight to that CEC level, is spending some time and maybe using this as a way to get in and get familiar with the process. This is a very fun basket to cook for sure.
So if you do have any additional questions as it relates to the Chef de Cuisine practical exam, please feel free to send an email to certify@acfchefs.net. And if we can answer them at the national office, we'll be happy to. If not, we will forward them on to our practical exam subcommittee chair, Chef Moose Miller. So then just as we have this titled the Practical Exam Evaluator Refresher, we always like to throw some reminders at you and some additional training that is coming your way. We're going to talk a little bit about the feedback and critique section. Not going to go too into depth of this, but some things that we've seen as we travel the country, some things that I've gotten feedback from our certification trainers out there and our approved mentors of areas that could use some improvement and some reminders. I want to talk a little bit about that Domain 3, the craftsmanship skills as it relates to the savory levels. And then just give you a little bit of a teaser of what's coming up for 2019 and what the Certification Commission and Department have in store and planned. So feedback and critique, I believe Chef Shop wanted to take this one over. So
yeah, I'd
Chef,
love to if
ready?
I could, Jeremy. Yes, thanks, Jeremy.
Absolutely.
Feedback and critique. This is, I would say, the most important part of this whole process. A candidate has put themselves on the line for the day, and it is a disservice if we don't handle this feedback and critique in a positive, set environment approach. So prior to going into a critique, the evaluators or the people critiquing should have an idea of kind of their points and what they're going to say. The critique should be concise, 5 to 8 minutes in length, not drawn out. There's other candidates usually still testing in there. We want to give clean, concise information, but we don't want to get off track and draw it out. We want to set a stage that isn't stoic, but also is very, I don't know what the right word is, set up, very, professional is the right word, actually.
And
so,
just to go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Just to chime in on the critique session and its length between 5 and 8 minutes is remember that you are an evaluator for a certification exam. This is not a training opportunity. This is an evaluation of the skills and assessments as they relate to the national standard that's been defined by the Certification Commission. So this is not the opportunity to coach and train. The feedback and critique session is really designed to evaluate, to give that candidate feedback on the exam that they just tested as an evaluator. If there is further discussion that you'd like to have with that candidate after the exam session is over as the capacity of the chef that is invested in this candidate and you see potential and you want to help them along in their future and in their career, then that's done outside of the exam session. Please just remember to keep the feedback and the critique to a concise points, as Chef just mentioned.
Excellent point, Chef. Excellent. We want to remain positive. That's all we need to say about that. We want to be objective. Remove your personal opinions. I would have, if I did, when I did the exam, any of that stuff. Just be objective. Stay on topic. Be supportive. And offer solutions of support or education, again, to the point of a concise feedback critique. Perhaps that's the opportunity to say, hey, here's my card, reach out to me and we can talk more in depth about this if you're interested. And then wrap it up and let that candidate clean up and head home. It's been a long day and they're usually heading back to work.
So with the go ahead, Chef.
Sorry, I think just one thing to kind of echo and add in there. I mean, I think it's important for us to remember, especially if we have a candidate that maybe isn't successful, that we want them to leave. You know, naturally they're going to be disappointed, but we want them to leave with feeling positive as much as they can. We want them to return, and we want to be able to help provide, you know, support and education for them after that. You know, not everyone has the same resources for support and education as everyone else. So I think it's just, especially with someone who is not successful, is just making sure that we have a good critique and explain exactly why they weren't successful and how they can be successful next time.
On the flip side of that as well, to those candidates that do successfully pass, if you see those stellar performances where we've had the privilege of seeing some candidates that maybe they go for their certified working pastry chef when they're a fully capable candidate for the certified executive pastry chef, you know, offer the solution and the support to guide that candidate to the next level. And if you don't have the time or the energy or the effort to supply that support, you know, hopefully you can connect them with their local chapter and their certification chair network and really help that create that sense of community as it relates and revolves around certification. A lot of people aren't aware of all the ACF resources that are available for certification at the local chapter level and the national level. So
I like the word that you put in there, community, Jeremy, because that's what this is all about. We're constantly building that community. We're constantly trying to help train those next evaluators, train the next admins, and build the community. Because the bigger and broader and more supportive that community is, I think it's better for all of us.
Absolutely. So that sums up the feedback and critique part of this refresher. Wanted to touch really quick on Domain 2 organizational skills and timing, as over the course of the year we've received at the national office some requests to clarify what happens in the event of a candidate running over on time, how many quote unquote, how many points do I deduct, and wanted to just specify some areas of clarity as it relates to organizational skills. Please remember that organizational skills in Domain 2 is 20% of the total score, which means it should not be completed until the candidate is completely done with their exam. So just like craftsmanship skills, we want to take detailed notes, but it is not to be filled out with a score until the exam is complete. I also would like to redirect your attention to the Certification Evaluator Handbook, which is online under Certify, Certification Evaluators, Certification Evaluator Handbook in the pink box. It has been updated last year, and it was basically answers a lot of evaluator questions that if you haven't checked it out in a while, I encourage you to turn back to it and skim through it and know that it is a valuable resource if you have evaluators that maybe there's some disagreements at the time of the exam, that the lead evaluator or the evaluator in charge can then reference this manual to really have that conversation and get it clarified. The following text was taken directly from that handbook under organizational skills in Domain 2 as it relates to timing. And if a candidate is running late, it could be a lack of organization, knowledge, and or skill set and should be reflected in the score. A candidate could lose points in organizations, procedures, and methodologies, as well as food integrity with the served cold due to poor time management or correlating deficient skills. There is no rule regarding the number of points deducted for tardiness. A cumulative loss of points may or may not result in a failing score. So as it's 20% of their score, it may or may not result in that candidate failing. There's no standard point deduction for being late. Document what caused the candidate to be late. So going back and finding out, was it their mise en place, was it their fabrication, was it their organizational skills, was it their mise en place? It's our responsibility as evaluators to make sure that we document the reason for the cause of them being late. Hopefully that helps. There's a reason we don't do these in webinar conversations anymore. If you do want to further discuss this with any member of the Certification Commission, Practical Exam Subcommittee, or anyone else at the National Office, please send us an email and we can clarify and discuss this a little bit further if you'd like. Would really like to go through just the craftsmanship skill and domain 3, as this is a hefty point of weight distribution as it relates to all the levels, and it is 40% of the total score. So thinking rather broadly in this training and this refresher, no specific exam level in particular, and we can talk a little bit savory and pastry, but some items that are underneath this and their weighted distribution. 5% of that 40% is the use of equipment and weighing and measuring. Shop, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, depending where you are on the ladder, lower CC, CSC, we're actually looking to see some actual weighing and measuring as they're moving along. Probably up at the CCC and CEC level, at that level, that's common sense that some of that stuff is being eyeballed, and it's going to show in their finished product. But we always want to look back at that. In baking and pastry, we're looking for, again, that scaling, weighing, and measuring, use of equipment, proper use of equipment. And that may be simply stuff that is pre-scaled, pre-measured when it comes in and labeled properly. But we want to make note of that and as we're going through the evaluations.
Awesome. Knife handling and butchery is 5% of that 40% total score. Chef Moose Miller, you want to take that a little
again,
bit?
I mean, we can't stress this enough. I mean, all these are based on where they're at on the ladder. I think that's where you really need to look at this from the beginning. You know, I mean, knife handling, I think across all levels, safety is paramount. You know, is the knife sharp? Are they using the appropriate knife for the appropriate job? You know, in regards to butchering, you know, I mean, I think at a lower level, we're looking for a very good understanding of that butchery and some decent execution. You know, at a higher level, getting into butchering, making sure we're utilizing trim, and you know, definitely paying attention to proper sanitation and cross-contamination during those processes as well.
Preparing sauces and emulsification is 10% of that 40% score. So again, keeping in mind that it's a 1 to 10% or a 1 to 10 scale that weights almost 10% or 10% of that 40. So again, when we're talking those higher levels, is it a more refined sauce? Is it more flavorful? Is it broader, clearer? Is it you know, an elevated sauce at an executive chef level opposed to a sous chef level? Right. And then the big one at 20% is the fundamental cooking procedures and methodologies.
I think with that one, you know, it's important to really just look at the processes. You know, if it's roasting, are they roasting it properly? Are they allowing the product to rest appropriately? If they're sautéing, are they allowing the pans to get hot? You know, cold oil, you know, quick deglaze, you know, following the right procedures. You know, does it make sense? Are they using the right cooking procedure for the protein or the item that they're cooking? You know, and really, you know, do they understand, you know, have a good concept and idea of what they're doing? And again, looking at the different levels, you know, looking at a CCC or a CEC level, you know, definitely looking for those procedures to be right on. And that's really what we're looking to evaluate at those points.
Excellent. And that reminder, don't fill this section out until a candidate is finished with their exam, and take lots of notes during that cooking time so you can understand and remember how their fabrication was, how their emulsification process was. Really just taking good detailed notes of the entire process, and the score is reflected on the entire process.
I don't think you can say that. Yeah, I don't think you can say that enough, Jeremy. The notes, if you take good notes, the rest of this, it'll all be there for you. And sometimes you're evaluating 2, 3, 4 candidates, you're changing rooms, you're doing critiques. It's the notes that are going to help help you remember and differentiate from one candidate to the next on a long day. So just fill them out. That's what we're there to do. You know, a little plus if it's something positive you're seeing, a little minus if not, and just don't worry about anything else. Just fill those sheets up.
Excellent, excellent. So some reminders of what's out there as evaluator resources and some of the projects that are upcoming and things that we're working on. And, you know, we really rely on our evaluators and our evaluator network to be the ambassadors for ACF certification. And we continue to hope that you are out there talking about the importance and the value of certification to some of the younger culinarians, as well as some of the more, let's just say, maybe stagnant in their careers, where maybe certification can spark that energy back for the culinary arts and really just begin to network and continue to push the value of ACF certification. We can't thank you all enough for that. And just some exciting things that are going on right now. Our written exam and for our pastry ladder is is underway right now. So if you have pastry chefs that are interested in joining the process of rewriting not only the written exams, but as well as the practical exams, which will be coming up in the near future, of really looking at the entire pastry ladder, please let them reach out to the national office and continue to check the communications that come from the national office, as we are continually calling for volunteers. Bring to your attention the Certification Chair Network. That is our local chapter ambassadors throughout the nation. They get a quarterly newsletter that gets sent to them. So if you are aware of your local chapter certification chair, please just encourage them to continue to promote and communicate the messages of the many changes that this commission is involved in. As you can see, we've changed a lot and updated and advanced the certification with the ACF over the past few years, and we're continuing to do more. The Certification Chair Network is the first group that hears about the changes that are up and coming before the rest of the ACF membership and our communication pools. So they have the latest and greatest as changes approach. So please get involved with the local chapter as an evaluator and our ambassador for certification, and target those certification chairs and work with them. If you are one, thank you for doing that. If you're not getting the emails, let us know and we'll make sure that you are. The new score sheets, as was discussed, we are working diligently to get all of them updated to that individual sheet format that you just saw. We should have them all completed by 2019. Second quarter is our target with that, as the certified culinarian has just been sent over to release. Please only use score sheets that are coming from the national office. This goes right back in line with making sure forms are current. As an evaluator, if you see the old ACF logo on a form, please say something to the administrator of that exam and coach them along to make sure that they have the right, proper paperwork. We are getting rather firm at the national office with making sure that forms are accurate and they're up to date. And we still continue to see certification forms that have the old logo on them. And if you're hosting an exam or if you're evaluating an exam, get familiar with the current forms that are online right now. Get familiar with the new formats and the look of them, and then just keep your eyes out and make sure that the forms that are being used are accurate and up to date and current. If you have questions, please reach out to us and we can set you along the way. At the 2018 National Convention in New Orleans, we did a pastry evaluation training with our former practical exam subcommittee chairs, Thomas Kiernan and John Schopp, and it was very well received as they went through the entire pastry ladder. And we are really looking forward to launching more pastry evaluation training. It was the largest feedback we got from the last session of the refresher, And so it is on our radar in 2019 to do mini trainings for the evaluators as it relates specifically to the pastry levels. NOCTI is our administrator for the Certified Fundamental and Certified Fundamental Pastry Cook levels, which are our intro levels to the certification ladder. Every practical exam, approved practical exam test site in the ACF community and network is eligible to become a NOCTI exam test site. There's some forms that just need to get completed. We'll be happy to guide you along the way if you'd like to start hosting and administering the CFC exam levels. And the exciting news this year, we will be hosting an evaluator training at the National Convention in Orlando in August 4th through the 8th of 2019. We're bringing this back, so if you do have anyone out there that is interested in becoming an evaluator and going to the National Convention, please just give them a heads up to keep their eyes open, because we will be making an announcement to do an evaluator training at the National Convention in August. That does conclude everything that we have scheduled for in this refresher. Please take the quiz that's linked in this email. On behalf of the ACF National Office, thank you for all you do in making certification happen throughout the country. It is by the efforts of all of you that we make this happen. Chef Moosemiller, anything else to add?
No, one thing that I would just to finish on is, before you go in and begin these evaluations, is make sure you go back through and just spend a little bit of time looking at the requirements and just refreshing in your mind what it is. There's been a lot of changes, and just to make sure we're all on the same page and evaluating the same stuff. But with that, I think we've covered a good deal of information today. And again, like Jeremy said, if you ever have any questions or need any type of support, please reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We'll be more than happy to put you in the right direction.
Excellent.
Chef Shop?
I would just like to reiterate a big thank you for your time, for your energy, to our evaluators. You folks make a difference out there. You're giving of your time. We appreciate that, and moving our profession forward. So thank you very much. I've seen just a ton of very committed, good evaluators out there in my travels, and you all should be commended. I don't think I've ever bumped into anybody that doesn't really care or isn't trying to do it the right way. A lot of thought goes into it out there, and a lot of people, they're having discussions, and those discussions work their way back to the commission, and that's how we implement change and keep moving this thing forward. So thank you for your commitment.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.